Hey everyone, welcome to Logan's Mosh Pit. Glad to have you here. Do me a favor and please subscribe if you haven't already. Yes indeed, time for Rock and Read. Today we'll read Chapter 3 of White Line Fever by Lemmy. Chapter 3 is called UFO. Let's go. I first saw Reverend Black and the Rocking Vicars at Manchester's Oasis Club. The Oasis was where all the bigger rock bands played. I took to the Vicars straight away. The drummer's kit had double bass drums, the first time I had ever seen that, and he sat at the front. And they wore the Finnish national costume, reindeer skin boots, white trousers with lace-up flies, the smocks from Lapland, and Vicars collars. I thought that was very big, you know. They were extremely loud and smashed up all their equipment. Just bashed everything to bits. That was very cool too, and they had long hair. See, the drummer in the Motown sect was hassling for us all to get our hair cut short. We had gone to see The Who one night at the Oasis, and he was going on about, "Oh, they look great with that short hair, don't they?" That. I wasn't going to cut my hair. In fact, I was the last one in the band with long hair. Everybody else did cut theirs. Just in general, I was getting more and more mad with the guys in the band. Finally, I saw the Rocking Vicars at the Oasis again, and they were excellent. So I made sort of tentative inquiries. I learned that the guitar player was not reckoned a good long-term investment, so I followed them doggedly. The night I auditioned for the Rocking Vicars, I smashed my first guitar. I never could play lead guitar, you see. Still can't play lead guitar as we speak. But I fooled them by turning it up and moving my hands very fast all over the guitar. Then at the end, I jumped on the piano. It collapsed, and I rode it into the ground and smashed up all my equipment. There's a lot to be said for that, you know. A lot of times over the years, I should have smashed a lot of guitars, but I didn't, because it was the only guitar I had. But you know that if I had smashed it, I would have gotten another one somehow. I would have been better off. The Vicars hired me immediately, and I was with them for over 2 years, from 1965 till 1967. The band owned a guitar that sort of came with the gig, a Fender Jazzmaster. I had a Telecaster. I had just recently traded in my Gibson 330 for it, so I put the Telly's neck onto the body of the Jazz. That was a wonderful guitar, and I played it right through my time with the Vicars. When I left, I had to give them the Jazz bodies back. But after all, who am I to judge? The Vicars' lead singer, Harry Feeney, was known as Reverend Black. He looked very much like Peter Noone from Herman's Hermits. When he sang, he used to do the windshield wipers, you know? 4 fingers in the air, waving them back and forth. But he was a good frontman, and the chicks used to adore him. Pete, the bass player, would soon leave, so we ended up with Steve Morris, or Mogsy. He was a very miserly person, a trait he got from his father. I remember going over to his house once. I went up to the toilet, and his father shouted up the stairs after me, "Only use 4 sheets!" Scrooge comes to your town, you know. We had a guitar player for a while called Ken, who had this Mini Cooper, a racing model that was the apple of his eye. But he couldn't get the wire wheels, which were very hard to come by. He was driving down the road once when this other Mini Cooper overtook him like a bat out of hell. As he came to the next roundabout, he saw it upside down, all smashed up with the wheel still spinning, the guy hanging out of it unconscious. And Ken thought, "Ooh, unconscious is he?" Took the wheels off it, drove them back to a farm, and hid them in a haystack. Then he called the police and ran back to the roundabout, and this cop was standing there saying, "Look at that. Some stole his wheels." Ken nodded and said, "Hey, there's some around." That's the sort of people the Rocking Vicars were, in a nutshell. Then there was Siggy, short for Surreal, the drummer. He was the leader of the band, and he was one of them people who everything he did, he was best at. Swimming, you do 4 lengths, he'd do 6. If you went climbing, he would be up the tree and down again before you started on the second branch. Shooting pool, he'd have all the balls down and be on the 8 ball, and you were wondering how he did it. A driven man, but an excellent drummer. He was sort of like Keith Moon. Remember, he always had his drum kit right up at the front of the stage, which tells you a lot about his personality. Siggy was a right tyrant. We had this roadie, Nod, who used to stay with him. Nod was and is mentally unstable, but a truly wondrous man, really, all round. He's a very successful businessman now on the Isle of Man, where he's from. He got the job of bass player with the Guitars when Mogsy left, but he only lasted one night. He got so excited, smashing everything up, that he nearly died. Before he wrote it for the Vicars, Nod was the first DJ ever to broadcast on Radio Caroline, the first pirate radio station in the world. That kind of thing doesn't exist anymore, but back in the mid-60s, people would anchor a ship 3 miles off the coast of England so they could evade its radio laws and play what the ordinary radio stations wouldn't. There was a bunch of them around, and Nod was with the first one, but he left that to be Siggy's servant because he saw the rocking Vicars and was immediately gone over by them. Siggy had this huge bed in his bedroom, while Nod had a camp bed a couple feet away. "Do you know what I'm doing now, Nodder?" Siggy would ask. "No, Sig. I'm stretching out and my arms don't even reach the edges of the bed. It's so big. And you're in that camp bed, Nodder." "Yes, I know." "Say sir when you speak to me." "Yes, sir, I know." Then in the morning, Siggy would snap his fingers, and Nod would be out there with a frying pan, cooking his breakfast. There had to be some sort of latent gay thing going on there. They weren't each other, because Siggy was sleeping with this bird. I think her name was Jane. And Nodder used to go with girls too, so I don't think they were really aware of it. It was some weird, subconscious thing. There was this one time Nodder was driving our van along the promenade in Douglas on the Isle of Man, a big van with a gold cross on the roof and covered in lipstick-written messages like, "I love men with long hair." That was the thing in those days, lipstick on the van. The more covered it was, the more successful you were. The one-upmanship thing again. Siggy looked over at the rest of us. "I don't think you boys realize how devoted Nodder is to me," he said. "Yeah, we do," we told him. "No, you don't. Stop the van, Nodder." Nodder stopped the van. "Everybody get out," Sig declared. So we all got out of the back of the van. Siggy slammed the door shut, opened the window, and spoke to Nod. "Nodder, drive this van through that window." He pointed at a wedding store with a large display showing. "Certainly, sir." Vroom! Vroom! Straight through it, wedding dresses all over the van. The guys in the Vicar were a strange lot, but I had a lot of fun playing with them. We toured all over the north of England, and we'd bring the place down wherever we went. And I would always do a piano. A lot of places we played had a grand piano, usually painted white, and I would leap on the end with the outermost leg and ride it down into the crowd. We were a hell of a band, loud and exciting, kind of like the Who with long hair. We never did any original material, however. It was all covers like Skinny Minnie by Bill Haley or the Beach Boys. We did Here Today from the Pet Sounds album, which was quite innovative in those days. We used to do something of a cabaret act. Pete, the bass player before Mogsy, would drop his trousers during our show, and he had these big theatrical underpants on. That's always good for a laugh in England. So Pete would stand there like that, and I'd hit him with a custard pie. So I'd go right to the audience, pie in hand, asking, "Shall I? Shall I?" And they'd reply, "Yeah, hit him." They always do, don't they? Nothing as funny as a guy getting pied, you know. Every night, boof! Pete would get the pie, everybody would laugh, and we'd finish the song and pack up. The roadies used to make the pie out of flour and water, just mush the stuff around on a paper plate, and set it up behind the amplifier every night, and I never really checked on it. But there was one night when I went back to pick it up, and it was in a tin plate, a thick tin plate at that, like an ex-army tin plate. So I went over to Siggy, playing away, and I said, "It's a tin plate." "Hit him," he hissed. "But it's a tin plate. Look. The act. Hit him." "All right, then." So I went over to Pete and whap! You could hear a muffled scream of, "Oh!" I broke his nose in 2 places, and there was blood and snot everywhere. The kids thought it was excellent, though. thought it was part of the show. We used to have a good laugh at the rocking bacars. We had this terrible manager, Jack Vanette, a Jewish crockery salesman. He had a shop full of wholesale crockery in Salford, North Manchester, near to the Jewish neighborhood of Cheatham Hill. He got us this apartment here, and all of them really hated us because we were lying on the lawn of towels with chicks doing our nails and our hair. You know, all of them walking by glaring at the girls, and they didn't like us at all. The wrong side of the tracks we were, but we got away with it there because they were nice people, most of them. It was just the militant ones that wanted to give us trouble, but aren't there militants of every race, creed, and political persuasion who want to ruin it for everyone else? And we were fairly militant too, I guess. So we had our nice big flat in Cheatham Hill, and I fell in love with a French girl while we were living there. It was wonderful. I was smitten completely. Anne-Marie, her name was. She looked just like Bridget Bardot. She was a dentist daughter from near Limoges, and she came on holiday to my house in Wales. After 2 days, I left her sitting there totally on her own, while I went out with the lads. I don't know why I did that. She obviously wasn't the right one. I never found the right one. I thought I found the right one a few years later, but she died. But then, it'll always be the right one who died because you'll never know. She didn't have the chance to become the wrong one. Come to think of it, my next unintentional foray into parenthood happened while I was in the Rocking Bacars. They were these two girls who were singers in a band that used to tour the American air bases in Europe. I forgot what their group was called, the Rock Girls or the Rock Birds or some sort of birds. It was always birds around Liverpool. Anyway, Tracy and her friend used to come around. I really wanted her friend, but Harry got her. Tracy was cute too, and she had bigger tits anyway, so I was quite keen. The two of them came back to our apartment in Manchester and stayed for a weekend. Then, after that, they would come in and stay with us now and again. And then Tracy showed up one morning around 6 o'clock and woke me up. "I'm pregnant," she said, standing by my bed. What? Pregnant?" I groggily inquired. I mean, who's conscious at 6 in the morning? She took this as a terrible affront, that I wasn't immediately awake and at attention. "Right then," she snapped and walked out. That was it. She went away and had the kid, Paul, and brought him up on her own. I met him when he was 6 on a coke deal. I went to buy some cocaine from these Brazilian guys in Warwick Road, Earl's Court. We were all, waiting for the man, and I was in the kitchen making a piece of toast. Then, in walked this little blonde kid. "You're my daddy," he told me. "Mummy's in the other room." I walked in there, and sure enough, it was Tracy. I know why I was there, but how the did she come to be there? I'll never know. So I got her a fridge, 'cause she didn't have one. Dragged it up 4 flights of stairs for her. Terrible job, really, with only me and another guy doing it. Anyway, this kid was a great kid. He still is. I remember one time he came to see me. He was about 23 at the time. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "I have a problem." "How much is it, Paul?" "It's the landlord, Dad." "How much is it, Paul?" "He said he was going to throw us out on the street with all our stuff, and he's going to take my guitar." "How much is it, Paul?" "Well, it's quite a lot." How much is it?" "It's 200 pounds, actually." So I gave him the 200, and he went away. The next day, he showed up in a second-hand Lincoln Continental. The little He pulled up outside of the house saying, "Come and look at my new car." "Good con, Paul," I told him, "but don't ever ask me for rent again, 'cause you ain't gonna get it." An excellent scam, though. And then he stole one of my chicks off me, but I got him back. I stole one off of him. In fact, we swapped girls one night at Stringfellow's in London. You'd be amazed how many women wanna the old man and the son as well. Paul came over to the States a couple of years ago. He went over to my place and stayed for one day. The next day, 2 chicks called for him and he was gone. He went up into the hills with them, and I didn't see him again. He went back home without even calling and saying goodbye. I remember he was asking me for advice, and I was giving it to him. He's always done the exact opposite of what I said, which I think is fundamentally sound. Chip off the old block, wouldn't you say? But as usual, I digress. The Rocking Bacars recorded 3 singles while I was with them, 2 for CBS and 1 for Decca in Finland. One of the songs was called It's Alright, which Siggy claimed he wrote, but it was mainly a version of The Who's The Kids Are Alright. Our other song was The Kinks' Dandy, and we actually got all the way up to number 46 on the charts with that one. We even wound up getting the Kinks' producer, Shel Talmy. He was an American who was living in London. His office was above a Chinese food store on Greek Street in Soho, London. Quite a multinational happening. But that Chinese store, with all the ginger and in the jars, stunk really bad. When we had to go and see Shel, we would hold our noses and dash across the street and up the stairs until we got into the office. Shel was blind as a bat. He did have some sight, but it was pretty thin. He used to come into the studio saying, "Hi guys," and immediately blunder into the drum kit. He was always walking into walls and doors, and he had minders lifting him up out of the debris everywhere, but he'd never admit that he couldn't see. He just had friends who happened to be there, picking him up like it was an accident. His face was a constant mass of scar tissue about the eyebrows, but he was all right. He got the job done. We never had a hit, but we were huge on the circuit in the north. South of Birmingham, nobody had ever heard of us, but we used to pull thousands in places like Bolton. There was this one place we stayed in Bolton which had a circular stage that would spin around, and we'd all be torn off the stage by our fans before we were able to make the first rotation. The chicks would pull us down and tear all our clothes off of us. The Beatlemania thing, you know. Sounds like fun, doesn't it? Ha! Have you ever had a pair of jeans ripped off of you? The seam split against the inside of your leg. It's agony. Believe me. And the scissors. It was all the go then to get locks of hair from your favorite combo. If you've never seen 40 serious grim-lipped birds all holding scissors rushing at you. At another gig, Harry went running out to grab the mic, like he always did to start the show, and these chicks had hold of the cord and they pulled on it. Well, he went running out, and he never came back. He just went over the 7-foot-high stage straight into the crowd. Later on, he told us that as he was going down, a split-second thought ran through his head. Ah, great. We're really famous, and I'm really popular. I'm going to fall into all these chicks, and they love me, and it's going to be a sea of tits and legs, and... But these chicks parted like the Red Sea. He could see the nails in the floor planks coming up very fast. He also broke his nose in 2 places, and some girl broke his finger once, pulling his gold ring off. Another time, they took the boots off Siggy while he was playing the drums. Siggy ran through the hall barefoot, screaming, "Get that chick! I haven't got any spares!" All this adulation sometimes went to Siggy's head. Once we were scheduled to play with the Hollies at Manchester University, and Siggy insisted that we go on last. The Hollies were huge at the time. They had just done something like 6 #1 records in a row. And here was Siggy. We go on last, the Rocking Bacars, and the rest of it. And the guy running the show said, "I can't tell the Hollies that. They're the top of the bill. Don't be unreasonable." "Tell them that the Rocking Bacars go on last, and that's it," Siggy insisted. So the guy went to the Hollies. They didn't give a... "Yeah, go home early." So they went on first, and when we came on, the hall was empty. After all, everybody came to see the Hollies, right? So we go out on the stage, which was actually in 2 parts, pushed together and locked. And the night before, Siggy had complained to Nod that the bass drums had been moving forward. "If those bass drums move tomorrow, Nodder, you know what'll happen, boy?" So Nodder freaked out about that, and he put the spurs for the bass drum right in the joint between the 2 parts of the stage. The only problem was that someone had unlocked them. So we come in, and Siggy calls, "A 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom! Whop! The whole stage separated, and all his drums fell in the hole. There he was, left sitting on his stool with his sticks in the air. That was the end of the show. It was probably a good thing no one was there. Here comes the best part. As if all this wasn't surreal enough, I saw a UFO while I was with the Rocking Bacars. We were in our Zephyr going home to Manchester from Nelson in Lancashire across the moors, and this thing came over the horizon. It was a bright pink color and shaped like a ball. It went zoom and stopped dead. I don't give a what you tell me. A cloud of seagulls, a air balloon, forget it. It wasn't any of them things. This object went whoom like a bat out of hell and stopped like that. So we got out of the car and we were all looking at it. It hung there and it seemed to be pulsing, But that was probably the effect of the atmosphere, just like the stars appear to pulse. Then suddenly, bang! And it went right over our heads, from standing still to about 100 miles a second. Boom! And it was over the horizon within 2 seconds of starting off. Nothing we make can even produce a facsimile of that performance, right? Therefore, when you've eliminated all the possibilities, it was a UFO. However improbable that may seem. I'm sure it wasn't even looking at us. It was probably more interested in America. It was probably there by the time we were back in the car. A couple of times the Rocking Vicars got to play outside of England. One trip was to Finland. I never went back there again until I had Motorhead. The Vicars had a #1 record there. Of course, you only had to sell about 30,000 45s to be #1. The Vicars were the first British band to play behind the Iron Curtain. I'm not sure how that got set up. Our manager was an enterprising geezer, despite the crockery. We played in Yugoslavia, which is sort of the crossover country of the Eastern Bloc. That area doesn't have much going for it, really, other than that. Basically, its crops are rocks and scrub, and everybody's poor. We played in Ljubljana, now the capital of Slovenia. Then we went back down into Montenegro and Bosnia, and everyone would be about everyone else. I mean, like these people really wanted to kill each other. Apparently for historical reasons that have faded from their memory. It's ingrained in the children from the time they're a year old. It'll take a miracle to ever stop them. The Serbs hating the Croats. That's all you ever hear then, and it's still the same now. Of course, I figured they all were the bad guys, because they were doing I wouldn't do to people. I didn't know my own people were doing the same to them. I can't say that Yugoslavian trip was particularly enlightening. We only got to see the good bits. You get the tour guide, you know. But in a country like that, he's the tour guide, right? If he says we don't go down there, we don't go down there. Finally, in early 1967, I left the Rocking Vicars. They were still going until 7 or 8 years ago as a sort of cabaret act. But I had bigger plans for myself, you see. Conquering the north of England wasn't good enough for me anymore. I wanted London. Well, that wraps up Chapter 3. Let me know what you guys thought of Chapter 3 in the comments below. That does it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate the support. I'll see you next time. Till then, rock on.